Okay.
And so the project is that one of the movements that has been created to help companies to focus on the triple bottom line. So really focus on how is our enterprise, whether it comes from the social, humanitarian, not-for-profit side, or whether it comes from the capitalist side, how can we make it really look at sustainability? How can it protect the planet? Second one is, of course, the people. How can it be something that actually our value proposition, our business proposition, how can it protect our communities, have diversity inside the company or the organization, including all the way to the boards. And then the third one, of course, is profitability. And the one methodology that we've been working with in my company is B Corp. And so that's a movement that we're supporting. And what we're setting out to do at the moment, and we got B Corp Europe engaged, but also some people in Canada and Brazil and Australia who have been in the very early stages of the B Corp movement, involved in creating an e-learning package to help accelerate these whole conversations so that more and more companies adopt something like this methodology. And the limiting factor, and then I kind of stop before perhaps going into the three personas, Ingrid, I just let you steer me. The limiting factor with these things is always the board, because they're the ones who approve strategic direction. They're the ones who choose who's going to, get to be or stay as CEO. And a lot of the time we focus on the C-suite, on leaders, on CEOs, but we find that whether you're talking about a family business that's still run behind the scenes by somebody from a previous generation who doesn't even believe in climate change, it actually all filters through the boardroom. And so that's what we want to focus on with an e-learning package so that they can understand how they can get things moving.
Who should understand it? The board members.
So we have three personas. One is the CEO, which of course is a key player. So they need to have some sort of relationship with that conversation. The other ones are the non-executives. And then the third ones are the family members who can be shareholders, but are not necessarily sitting in the board. And so these are the key people we're addressing. We're not going for companies, are worried at the moment about companies that are on the stock market, because there are completely different forces impacting on them. And usually family businesses, which are 80% of the world's companies, 80, there's a lot going on with generational change and new wave of younger people inheriting companies. So we see a lot of movement in that area. So CEO, non-executives, and family members.
Non-executives.
Yes, non-executives.
What is that? What is a non-executive?
So it's somebody who, in an Anglo-Saxon context, you will usually have the executives, the top executives, CEO, CFO, a couple of these people. And then you have a few non-executive ones who are just coming in to supervise the action of the executives. And they form a single body that has an oversight responsibility. So it's a sort of highest risk management organ of a company or an organization, but they're also responsible for strategy. And in continental Europe, what you find is that they're two separate groups. And the non-executives are called supervisory board or administrative board, and they are there to check on whether the executives are doing their job right.
Okay. And okay. So you have a movement that you want to promote B Corp Europe that focuses on sustainability, community, and profitability. And you do that by promoting an e-learning platform for board members. Did I get that right?
It's actually an e-learning module rather than a platform. The platform has a lot more on it, but this is an e-learning module we're creating
for the board members.
Yeah.
And now what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Is to get the board members to take the e-learning module, or what is the
So to take the e-learning module is not the problem. The problem is what are the different players looking for? So for example, CEOs will tend to have their own motivations. So they might well be really interested in the planet.
wait a second. I will have to try
profits. It depends on, you know, their own motivations and what they've come to the table with. They also will always want to look good, which they must because they're representing the company. Whereas the non-executives are usually the people who are quite comfortable to challenge, unless of course it's a very sort of cozy old, you know, club of people who know each other for a long time. And they will tend to try and again, depending on what the company and the culture is, push the planet or the people, or actually not so much the question only of performance and profitability, but also good governance and whether the decisions are good that have been taken. And then on the family member side, the third personas, the third group, what we see a lot is that they're very, very worried about particularly the younger generations. What's the footprint we're leaving behind? Can we really preserve grandpa's legacy? And of course, there are many who are at the moment ready just to say, look, I want worry-free money, and why don't we just sell the company to a private equity company? I don't want to be part of having to work as hard as grandpa did.
Yeah. Okay. And how can I now help best with this? I mean, usually what I do is I ask you to get in the shoes of one. I don't think we can do more than one persona here. Maybe we can. And ask you what they want, and then I draw that. But maybe is this what would be helpful?
I think so. I think we could pick one of these three and then just
Yes.
just see what happens.
Great. So who is it? Who is the most problematic, maybe?
I would go for the non-executive.
Okay.
Because although collectively they have more power than the CEO, they often feel disempowered.
Okay. And can you help them by feeling more empowered?
Yes, because they need to find the good arguments. And a lot of the time, this discussion around the triple bottom line tends to be crowded with a lot of emotion. And so to actually have facts and figures around how you can actually have all of it. So for example, we often find in discussion that the non-executives say, yes, but you know, at the end of the day, it's all about profitability, and that's what we're there to serve.
Yeah.
They don't.
Let's first look at the problem side.
Yeah.
So what are they struggling with? First of all, are the people you're working with already on board with the idea of the B Corp?
So yes and no. I think nowadays everybody would have noticed that either in the press or at investor conferences, the children talking after school, everybody knows that we have a problem with sustainability. Every company now knows that they have to have some sort of relationship with it. And So the question is, how far do we want to take this? Do we want to make sure that our company is doing the best it can with a very clear methodology that B Corp has to actually change and become better? So that's the key question, you know, do we want to go for a structured way of really going through our environmental impact, if we just pick the planet side? On the people side, do we really want to assess whether we have slavery in our supply chain? And here we are selling something in a slick European supermarket, but actually our products are being made under horrible conditions when we look into our supply chain. And are we ready to have a look at that and fix that?
Okay, so the B Corp is, let's draw a guy maybe. He is
This guy looks like Zuckerberg.
Does he?
Yes.
Is it good or bad?
We can take a poll later.
Should I? I mean, I can give him glasses or something. So he is. In which what situation is he in? So now I drew his children, or just some children.
Nice.
Who have
So
to do something.
Consciousness issue. So, you know, in my lifetime, will I leave this company in a better place? And what will I say to my kids when they're big? Absolutely. But also, he might be looking for a very specific way to go about it rather than just talk about sustainability. Like, what can I actually do? And that's what we, of course, then want to help him with. And the tricky thing, and that's why I was really pleased to get onto this hot seat, is that he cannot just tell the CEO what to do, because that's not how this works. As a non-executive, you can only coach and challenge. You cannot dictate anything. So how do you get this transformation going without having the power to directly tell somebody, you've got to do this? So it's a transformation challenge.
Mm-hmm. So is he wearing a suit, or what is he wearing? Maybe.
Less and less, actually.
Oh yeah.
The pandemic has meant that many of these people have dropped. I mean, they're now wearing these, you know, Steve Jobs turtlenecks and stuff. And
okay, let's draw a turtleneck. I've never drawn a turtleneck before.
in the United Nations, you'll still find around the corner from here, you still find ties, but it's getting less. I even see some ambassadors to the UN that come to meetings without ties.
So this is the press and the children, and
Wow.
so this is one side of the equation, and the other side is the CEO.
Yes.
Is the CEO younger or older, or is it maybe different?
It depends. They can be older, but they can also be younger. Depends.
And what is typically now the CEO's role? He is. He's
So
also...
she can be, although she's a minority, she usually has the role to deliver on the company's strategy. And that's the tricky situation that they're in, is that they have to both perform and transform at the same time. And some embrace this and thrive on it, and some of them decide to go not the easier. I mean, nothing is easy nowadays, particularly since the pandemic and Russia declaring war. So they ultimately are measured on their performance, but many of them are also ready to transform. But then how do you do this? Again, methodology.
That's not how people talk. How do we deliver our promise.
Yes, nice one.
Um,
And there's still a lot of noise, Ingrid, out there with people saying, I have a better ESG methodology, environmental, social governance. I have a better one. I have a better one. And so there's
and who are these people?
it's just everywhere. It's on social media, it's in the conferences, it's in the press. People are not converging around a set of methodologies. It's like lots and lots of different conversations going on, and some of them are counterproductive because they are actually greenwashing or whitewashing. So we want to, of course, inspire them to say, look, this is a solid methodology that can really help you here. And it's not just about looking better, it really is about transformation.
And do they really want transformation? So they are already on board with that, or do you have to convince them?
I think the pressure is already, really high. And so now it's about picking a methodology and going for it. And so we will be talking to the ones who already know what B Corp even is. So we are not the ones to do the PR for B Corp, because B Corp has a fantastic PR machine themselves. But the ones that are interested in B Corp and saying, but how do I do this from a board perspective? Because I can't just say, okay, I'll do it. I'm not the CEO. How do I influence? How do I shape that conversation?
And how could you help him to a win-win situation?
Here we go. That's it. So I think the very first thing is that there's a conundrum here about, I have to, on the one hand, of course, advocate as a board member, but I can't push, because then you can also risk, a passive aggressive response. So treading really, and I'd love to have some images for this, how do we handle the push and pull of that? How do we challenge but also lead? How do we act as stewards, which is what non-executives really should be, and not just like police officers or mediators or controllers, but people who really lead as well and steward. And that's a very particular stance that we want to support them in taking.
So now he's feeling a lot of pressure from both sides.
Yes.
And
from all sides. I mean, if you just like put social media, like the dude is opening in the morning his smartphone and, it's everywhere, sustainability. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about diversity and inclusion.
So let's take them from here. Oops.
And profitability is a given, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be in business if you were not interested in being financially sustainable as well. And that's what a lot of philanthropy is learning from B Corp, is how important it is to have business models that are sustainable and you're not always asking for money from donors.
So the CEO is maybe more on the profitability side.
Yeah, I mean, that's the stereotypical CEO, but there are some very enlightened ones as well, of course, that would hate hearing us talk about them like this.
Yeah. And so he feels powerless. So what is the situation, like a concrete situation that he would be in? Now this is still a little bit abstract. Can you give an example?
So the concrete situation is that they might want to assess whether they're ready for a certification. The certification is like a self-test, right? Where you check whether you have the criteria, you satisfy the criteria to get a certification from B Corp, saying you are, a company that has actually checked its environmental impact, its social impact, and so on and so forth. So to do the readiness assessment, you already need to have an agreement in the board, and you need to have an agreement with the executives and the CEO. So how do you get that agreement to even get on the road? That would be a very specific challenge that they would have just at the very beginning of the journey.
How do I get an agreement from the board?
How do I get an agreement from the CEO? How do I get the people who are going to have to do the work, which is the executives? How do I get agreement for us to get on the journey?
Okay. And that would be, so right now he feels powerless and pressure from all sides. And an interesting question is always, how can it be that a smart guy like this is ending up in a situation where he doesn't know how to move forward, how to get agreement? Who is the enemy here? What is wrong with the world?
Yeah. So it's a systemic stuckness that we're in, and you see this in co-op and you see this everywhere, is that on the one hand we can all furiously agree that we want the planet to survive, and we can all furiously agree that it's a good idea to have a bunch of women in higher ranks. But when you actually have to contemplate what that means in practice, that's when it becomes difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the very specific things like, where do we source our materials from? How do we power our factories? Who do we employ? How do we employ them? How do we pay them? It's very, very basic things that B Corp is looking at and is saying, how does that contribute, or how does that detract from the Sustainable Development Goals? How does that help the planet? And do you even know what your impact is?
You know what? I draw a guy here instead of a woman because
Amit is writing something really interesting.
Yeah.
Stuckness here is taking a very honest look at its internal way the company is doing business. Exactly. And that honest look is a hard thing to do.
So is he lying to himself?
I don't know. Might be. What's B Corp exactly? It's a methodology for assessing your environmental impact, your social impact, and your governance, the quality of your governance structure, your decision making. And it's been developed by a legal entity that is called B Labs, and they exist all over the world. And they call themselves the B Corp movement. You're welcome, Josie.
Mm-hmm.
Do they need
I would also add that
enrollment?
Yeah, I mean,
I was
everybody is.
just going to add in my experience with just following B Corps, a big part is that they may have to essentially reassess how they do business, because at least in the US, companies are legally required to maximize shareholder value, and trying to get B Corp certification might not maximize it in the same way. And so there's a very strong legal resistance. And so that's a big part of the resistance, in my understanding.
Totally share that, Amit.
Yeah,
In other jurisdictions, the shareholder value is less of an obsession and less enshrined in the legal frameworks, but still the pressure to perform financially is very strong. Not everybody's Patagonia, right?
Mm.
Who've just given away their money.
So on one side, they have to maximize profit. On the other hand, they have to do the right.
Yes, do the right thing, exactly, which intuitively we all understand.
Mm.
But Amit really put his finger on it. It's that contradiction, that stuckness.
So if we now, what is he dreaming about? What is the situation that he would love to do?
So I don't know what he thinks. What I always like challenging them on is that when you get stuck, it's because you're in a sort of Cartesian mindset where you're thinking in a linear way, in a win-lose way. And I think what's beautiful about the B Corp idea is that the minute you approach it with a win-win mindset, that you can have both, and you can have all these things, and you go into the granularity of the detail of the assessment criteria, and you really say, how can I have everything? It is actually possible to find solutions. But we've been conditioned to think in a win-lose way. So if I do this, I'm going to have less of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can have, it's not a nirvana or utopia, but it is actually a place where we can liberate ourselves from the win-lose and really think win-win. And I think if the board member can paint that picture to the CEO, say, we can have this and we can have that, we can have this and we can have that. We can still look good and we can produce this. That's going to be the magic. Oh, like a smiling.
So now he's explaining, and how is he doing that?
Oh, he's totally talking about facts and figures, because whenever you're talking to non-executives and CEOs who are kind of on the, thinking around that question that Matt had earlier, do they need a strategy for effective enrollment in the idea? Whenever they're sort of in that process, it is really helpful to come with figures. And B Corp have tons of research that shows you, business schools have tons of research on stewardship and sustainability and how ethical companies have outperformed less ethical ones. There's tons of facts and figures around. But then there's also the Justin Trudeau, I love the mix of, why do you have 50% women in your cabinet? Because it's 2015. Like there's a real lovely mix of these two sort of, because it's the right thing to do. And by the way, here's the facts and figures. So I think that's what the board member in the future piece that you're drawing is feeling empowered to draw on, saying, actually, we need to take a stance. And that's what people did during the pandemic, which was amazing. Like, we have to save our people. We have to do certain investments because we need to make sure we all have masks and everybody is allowed to stay home. And there were a lot of very beautiful examples of companies that had no idea what was going to happen to their business as the pandemic hit, but they took an ethical stance or a leadership stance.
Leadership.
That's what the student needs to do. He needs to take a position.
Okay, let's put him on now.
Let's soapbox.
Give him feet.
Oh, nice. Now I see what you're doing. God, I dread the moment when we're all going to go into the metaverse and we won't have legs. We only will have upper bodies.
Now he is standing on the ground, standing his ground.
Yeah. Nice. Actually, this is such a good word image, isn't it? Standing your ground.
So the right thing to do, plus facts and figures.
Yeah.
And his children are now proud of him, or at least
Oh,
kind of.
the children are now not embarrassed by dad. Absolutely, he could be holding a mirror to the company, which is actually his role.
Okay, holding.
That's the role of the non-executive.
I don't know if this would look stupid if he actually holds a mirror.
I'm amazed how fast you draw in this digital space, Ingrid. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the same time, she's listening to all the words you're telling. So it's fantastic.
I mean, it is a little rushed here, I have to say. Because this is a complex thing, and we're not going to solve it in this space here.
You have solved it already, Ingrid.
Yeah.
I think we just need to, sit with the tensions. And what I love in what you've done is this idea of standing your ground. I think that's a really powerful picture that you've created, and I'm definitely going to treasure it. There's and then I'll shut up because other people might. But I was talking to a woman who worked with the current World Trade Organization chief from Nigeria when they were both together at the World Bank, and she told me that her boss would always kick her shoes in the morning. So you see this amazing woman with the African hair and headdress and her African clothes, which she makes herself. But all these years, she was always barefoot in Washington in her office. So she would always literally stand her ground, which is a very African thing that ancestors do. And this is just really reminding me of that, how powerful that is to really literally anchor ourselves in the earth ourselves as we make our point, as we advocate, and as we transform. I love the picture. You've solved the planet's problems, Ingrid.
I think it is you who is solving the planet's problems here.
There are no dinosaurs having sex with humans, but that's not what we set out to do here today.
What are the 3 easy steps that that he has to take in order to get from left to right? That you can tell them, first do this, that's this, and then you're on your way.
I love the mirror that came in through Matt. So something about, has our NED done the work on finding out what that would mean to hold up the mirror? Because you need to have your analysis of what's actually going on before you do anything. before you can advocate. So that would be a first one. How do I know where we are today? And then I would go for the facts and figures. And then the third one would be, it's a very Shakespearean thing to say, but it's a sort of dark night of the soul. You know, am I ready to step up in my role and challenge ourselves to do better? And that's a nerve-wracking thing to do for anybody.
No, you just, I heard Shakespeare, but what was
The dark night of the soul is a sort of before Henry V goes out in battle against the odds, against the French. He has this moment where he has to think, do I have the courage? You know, do I have it?
And that's the third step?
That's the third step.
Mustering up the courage.
To step up and
step up.
And then the second was to get the facts and figures straight.
Yeah. Step up.
It's very anxiety provoking. The boardroom is the most anxiety provoking room in the whole company, I've found.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can always like find an enemy if you're somewhere else in another room in a company, but in a boardroom, the buck really stops with you and it's your responsibility, and you end up in front of the judge if something happens. And it's very anxiety provoking to take a stand, but you have to. Well done, you.
Mustering up the courage.
Yeah. Aw. You're right, because it has to come from the heart. Otherwise, we don't find the energy. You're absolutely right. Inga, she draws with her heart. She draws with her, like you say, she listens, Inga, right?
But wait a second. We haven't the guide yet. Who is the guide? Who is helping this guy? Is it the B Corp?
Yeah.
Or is
B Corp
there...
has sort of tons of people and consultants who help them with their certification, with the assessment, the readiness assessment. They have everything that they developed in the B Labs.
Mm-hmm.
This is just to help the board member to get themselves ready.
Yeah.
But the resources are all there. We have all the data, all the facts, all the figures. It's all there. You know, per industry, per geography. It's very organized, B Corp now. It's no longer a baby movement.
And how did you? Now I'm adding a little shadow because it just looks better for everybody who's drawing along, because some people I know are drawing. I put a little shadow here underneath. How did you get into this work?
So I was running masterclasses for 100 women in finance to get women onto boards between 2013 and 2015. And then one day I was running this masterclass for women on boards in BlackRock, Zurich. And one of the people introduced herself as a capitalist investor woman. Mm-hmm. And she talked about B Corp, and she said how brilliant it was because it could persuade a very rational thinking investor that this was actually a good idea. And that's how I came across it. And I fell in love with the concept. And now we created our own company a year ago that is incorporated as a B Corp already from the start. So every single decision of ours, we oriented around the people, planet, and profits idea. Everything we do has to satisfy the three things from the start. So we try and live it. Thank you, Amit.
Beautiful.
Personal integrity. Yes, that's the courage piece. Personal integrity. Matt is absolutely right.
Yeah, thank you for reading a little bit, because I when I'm drawing, I don't see the chat. Yeah. So here we have the win-lose mindset on this side here. And he's stuck in the system. he's in systemic stuckness and wants to do the right thing, but doesn't know how to reconciliate these two sides while the CEO is watching him. And here he's standing his ground and has the right thing to do and facts and figures right.
Lovely. Absolutely lovely. You hit the nail on the head.